John Lillywhite.
Present.
Kelly Bray.
Present.
Mayor Costin.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Prior to tonight's meeting, you were given the minutes from the October 15th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
No,
No corrections. I'll make a motion we accept as written.
and I will second that motion.
Been a motion made and seconded to approve the minutes from the October 15th meeting as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. On the agenda tonight, we are going to, under new business, remove item B.
I was really looking forward to that.
Well, we were hoping you would just go ahead and read all through them and give us a report back.
Oh, no, I was going to read it publicly for everybody.
Let's go ahead.
Moving right along, Mr. Oaks.
I'll have to tap dance a long time because I'm the only one. What you have tonight is a salt barn. We used to have our salt and sand stored down at the Rogers Block plant south end of town. That property was sold to the RMC, so we had to replace that. We're going to build a salt barn at the street department building. We've taken millings over the last 2 years to make a bigger pad up there to be the base for this. So this is a salt barn. We'll build up there, and a able assistant will open that. We just have a single bid. It's from Davies County Metals. They've done the last 3 buildings. That's kind of why I suspect we only have one bid, at least a small building. And I suspect the other bidders recognize that that might be swimming upstream. This is from Davies County Metals, DC Metals, $76,200. It's a building plus the pad. Now, this pad will not include, obviously, we don't need the PEX system we put in the floor of the bigger building up there, but this will be the best building plus an apron coming in. It's open on both ends. There's no doors, so our access will be through both ways. So it'll be salt storage. We will not store any salt in there this winter. We don't put salt on fresh concrete. So this will be for salt storage next fall. $76,200.
So Gary, do you want to bring that back to the next meeting to make sure they've met all the requirements as opposed to voting on that tonight?
Yes, I haven't been through their package because we just opened it tonight, so yeah, it should come back next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
There are no sewer adjustments tonight. So our next regular meeting, due to the Veterans Day holiday, will be on Tuesday, November the 12th, 6:30 here in the chambers. If there's no other business, we are adjourned. Oh, wait.
I wanted to tell you that we have 2 fire trucks now sitting in St. John, Indiana. Just thought I'd tell you we've been waiting for almost 4 years, so we're doing good.
They're getting closer.
They're getting closer. Want to let you both know. You two ladies, please. Yeah.
Just for free.
Good evening and welcome to the Monday, October 28th, 2024 meeting of the Martinsville Common Council. The meeting is hereby called to order. Mr. Murdo, would you please call roll?
Phil Deckard second. Phil Deckard Sr. Ann Miller. Josh Farron.
Present.
Ben Mahan.
Present.
Susie Lips.
Present.
John Badger.
Present.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to invite Pastor Uwe from Life of Love Ministries to open us with our prayer. And then if you would please remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. It's an honor. Lord, we just bless you tonight. We thank you for this meeting. We thank you, Lord, that your presence will reside upon the meeting. We bless you, Lord, that you give the men and women that serve in this city of Martinsville, Lord, wisdom for the people to guide, govern, and guard. We thank you, Lord, that you protect the people that live in this city. And we ask, Lord, that your blessing will be upon it in every way, Lord. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Thank you. We have two sets of minutes to approve. The first one is from the Monday, September 23rd meeting. You received those in your packets. Are there any corrections or questions regarding the minutes?
Move to accept the minutes.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the minutes from the September 23rd meeting as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. The next set of minutes would have been for the October 15th meeting. Are there any additions or questions to those minutes? Again, I would entertain a motion regarding those minutes.
Move to accept the minutes.
Second.
The motion made and seconded to approve the minutes from the October 15th meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Before we get too far into tonight's meeting, and Ms. Webster, you might be able to elaborate on this. The Spirit Award that the school won. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, every Friday during the regular football season for high school football, WTHR, where Samantha Johnson is now employed. She's a graduate of Martinsville High School. The sportscasters come and to one or two high schools and visit. They do video and kind of gauge your spirit to see who shows up at 6 in the morning before school, and the band's usually there, the community support comes out. We were a selected school in, I think it was in September, and they showed up, and then at the end of the season, they award or recognize one school for having the most school spirit. And Martinsville High School was chosen, and they made the presentation at Martinsville High School in front of the student body, and had Jeff Bell there along with the red and blue crew representatives to receive this award. And the students were very excited because this is something that they've kind of pursued the last few years. You know, the banner, the spirit, and so it was a good thing for our community, because it said a lot about the pride that students and organizations and families portray about student involvement, student participation, making good choices at school, making, people happy, that kind of thing. So,
Okay, well,
yeah.
Congratulations to the school, but more importantly, congratulations to the students.
Yeah, and I think it says a lot about Martinsville High School and the way our families raise students and make healthy choices about doing good things for the school and representing. So it's good for our community. Thank you for recognizing it.
You would know more about it than I did, so thank you.
Well, I'm Jeff Bell, the principal of Martinsville High School. He's the cheerleader. He's the red and blue passion, you know. He's ringing the bell on Friday with the students and kind of recharge that whole tradition that was started back in the 1970s where they ring the bell, the Artie bell.
Who was coach at that time?
Oh, well, I think his name was Coach Seidowitz. And they put that bell in the athletic, outside the athletic office, and they ring that on the hour. And he started doing that 3 years ago when he came here again, Jeff Bell. Came back because he was a student here, graduated from here, and now he's the principal. So he is a true artesian. So we're glad to have him.
Good things.
And it was definitely a team effort, not just Jeff. It was the staff and the students and lots of family members and community members that helped do this. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. We need to have a public hearing this evening, so without objection, we will recess the council meeting so we can enter into the public hearing. And this is regarding compliance with Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. That all being said, Mr. Meredith.
Yeah, so tonight before you for the public hearing, the city of Martinsville is going through an internal audit with the coordination of NDOT, just updating some of our documents and establishing some documents that are required by the state. So part of this pack tonight is the accessibility statement, also a grievance procedure. There's also a resolution that's included. So some of these are establishing these documents for the first time. Some of these are updating our resolutions that were passed back in 2019. And these are part of the requirements with NDOT as opposed to our agreement with them on making sure that we are as ADA accessible as we possibly can be.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Meredith? At this time, is there anyone in the public that would like to comment regarding this subject? Okay. If not, then declare the public hearing closed, and without objection, we'll move back into the common council meeting. First thing on the agenda is the first reading of the compliance standards. Mr. Meredith, anything else you want to say?
No, just a little bit in that packet. Those are the accessibility statements and also the grievance procedures for anyone that feels like we aren't being compliant. Basically, it just gives them a roadmap for how they can file that grievance, and also gives them ability to reach out to us to make sure that we are providing them all necessary means to be compliant with the ADA and the Title II and Section 504.
And since this is just the first reading, there'll be no vote on this. The second reading will be at our next meeting. We also have a first reading tonight on ordinance 2024-1895. This is amendment to zoning ordinance regarding signs and advertising structures. Mr. Coffey.
So you have in your packet this evening the proposed amendment to zoning ordinance concerning signs. This went through a public hearing at the Plan Commission meeting at their September meeting, and the Plan Commission voted to send it on to the City Council with a favorable recommendation for the actual ordinance you have before you. So this will be amending our current ordinance concerning our signs. I believe tonight we do have our consultant with us that led us through this process, so he wants to maybe speak a few words if you have any questions for him as to how we got to this process. The council obviously is the body that has to actually approve this ordinance. First reading this evening. Like I said, the public hearing happened at the Plan Commission stage, so there's no public hearing required at the council stage. But if you have any questions, certainly we're here tonight to answer those for you.
Brent, is there anything you want to say to the council regarding this?
Good evening, council members. I'm Brad Johnson with Ground Rules, been involved in the process from the beginning. I'm prepared to give a presentation about kind of why we did this and what's different about this, if you want me to do that, or I can just take questions, whichever your preference is.
I'd like to see the presentation, or like to hear it.
Sure. Thank you. So just to begin, when I first started getting involved, it was a lot of conversation about temporary signs and the proliferation of temporary signs in the city. That then continued on to having further conversations about other sections of the sign ordinance that was outdated, just felt like it was tired, was not meeting the city's expectations any longer. So we did look at it comprehensively. We also, Mike Kirch, if you're familiar with him, several years ago, he and some others tried to do a full revision of the sign ordinance at that time. That never was taken through the Planning Commission process or council, but there was a lot of good material there. There was quite a bit of energy and effort that was put into that draft, and I wanted to at least honor that and take that into consideration. So reading your current ordinance that's on the books, plus that draft that was prepared by some of the members of the Plan Commission, as well as just best practices that we're seeing in cities and towns similar in size to the city of Martinsville, that's kind of what we used as a basis. So we addressed the temporary signs, we brought things up to date. There's quite a bit that's changed since your ordinance was put into place, specifically case law. You know, I read through it and there's certain things that jump out to me that I know for fact the U.S. Supreme Court has shut down. So for instance, the identification of signs, if you have to read the sign to know what kind of sign you're regulating, then it's not legal. They want you to be content neutral in your sign. So in your ordinance, it says something like, a sign that says for sale, for items that are for sale, you can have a certain number of those on your property. Well, you have to read it to know if it's a for sale sign. So for that reason, we just can't do that any longer. It's unfortunate. It's kind of this hiccup that we've had to deal with as urban planners and community advisors. So what we do is just call it a temporary sign. And then we have another provision for special temporary signs, which is just another way to give people what they need on their properties. So we can't say a real estate sign or a grand opening sign and have a special option for that. And you do have that in your ordinance as well. There's a provision for if somebody wants a temporary sign for a grand opening. Well, if you have to read it to know it's a grand opening, you can't do it that way. So we've given community or the residential as well as commercial properties very similar opportunities to have signage, but we just have to strip out all of that language about the content. We've also, just as a passion of mine, part of the company's mission is to make any ordinances that we're a part of as simple as possible. I want the average citizen to be able to pick it up, read it, and understand it. So simplifying the language. We found paragraphs where they were mashing up a couple of different types of regulations. So for instance, standalone, or like freestanding signs is mashed up with wall signs. So we broke that out as to separate regulations. So it's really clear what you can do for a freestanding sign versus a wall sign. Because it was mashed together, there was questions like, well, it tells me what the height limitation is for the freestanding sign, but it doesn't tell me what the height limitation is for a wall sign. So just clarifying some of that. There was some voids that needed to be filled just because, again, it wasn't quite thorough in some spots. And we've done all of this going from about 10 to 11 pages that you have currently in your ordinance to 14 pages. So we really haven't grown the overall size of the document much. But in that expansion, we've gone from 8 definitions to 48 definitions. Definitions are really critical in creating a document that's legally defensible. We want to know what we mean when we use those words. So it doesn't add regulation, it adds clarity. So adding those definitions is something we've done, as well as added graphics. So sometimes the words don't make sense to people, but the picture does. So in this document, we have 16 graphics as well, whereas your current ordinance does not have graphics. We took, you have an overlay district specifically for the downtown that had its own sign regulations. We took those sign regulations out of that section and put them in here so people can find sign regulations all in one spot instead of trying to figure out where do I go for sign regulations in the downtown. They were just kind of hidden away in this overlay district. So those are some of the things that we've worked on. As far as a few other kind of flaws that we corrected is the term advertising structures was used, and it has been used with communities for billboards. Outdoor advertising, AKA billboards. Same thing is that's a regulation for off-premise signs, and that's where the courts also, this content neutrality comes into play. If you have to read the sign to know that it doesn't apply to the business that is on that piece of property, or maybe there's not even a business there at all, but if you have to read it to know if it applies to that property or not, again, we can't do that anymore. So we regulate off-premise signs differently, just again, having allowances for permanent signs, temporary signs. It's not exactly the same, but it's just what we have to deal with the courts ruling the way they have. So right now, for new billboards to be permitted in the city, it would be a special approval, a variance through the Board of Zoning Appeals to get that to come in. And that's really just the best tool we have for those. If you want more of them, that would be the best path for that to happen is through the BZA. Trying to think if there's anything else that's worth mentioning here. Yeah, there were a couple of phrases, one in particular, that signs, if they're facing residential and if they're within 200 feet of residential, then the BZA has to grant special exception. It's really unusual to have a phrase in an ordinance that says that if this and that is the condition, then it has to get a special approval. Typically, it would just say that if you're within 200 feet and your sign is going to would be facing a residential, it's just not permitted, because any provision can be superseded by a BZA. But writing that in there, so if somebody wants a taller sign, they go to the BZA. If somebody wants a smaller setback, they go to the BZA. In this case, if the sign would be within 200 feet and facing residential, they would just go to the BZA. Writing it in is just, you could write that phrase in after every provision, just making note that it can go to the BZA. So we took that kind of stuff out, because honestly, for the layperson, it just becomes really confusing that, oh, well, if it says I can do this here with the BZA, I guess I can't do that. I can't get any relief from the provisions elsewhere. So we just try to remove those types of confusing statements.
What legal scrutiny is this ordinance? What do you use to draft it?
If I understand the question, just, what do we use, or how do we
went through it about certain things off of it. I've just
Yeah.
noticed some things in here that I don't know.
Yeah. So myself and honestly, no attorney could ever say that this absolutely would stand up in court. There's no way to do that. But we do know certain things that have failed in court, and certain ones that have failed in, Indiana Supreme Court or U.S. Supreme Court. So we just don't even want to go down those paths. So where the courts have been really clear, we've taken that content out. Here's another example is that we particularly identified, your ordinance currently says signs, this type of sign is exempt. What we say in this is that these are not signs, and for that reason, they're exempt. So it's just a small difference.
What would be an example?
Yeah, so political signs. freedom of speech type signs. A lot of people, when they hear the word sign, it's like you have signs in front of each of you that says your name. But that's not a commercial message. This ordinance is only regulating commercial messages. That's what's delegated to communities to be able to regulate. We really aren't supposed to be regulating political signs, freedom of speech type signs. And also we've been very clear in here in listing things that, believe me, I've worked in so many communities that they want to, if it says men's room on the outside of a filling station, they want to count that as a sign. Well, that's another sign, you're in violation. No, that's just identifying that if you go through this door, that's where the restroom is. Or deliveries, signs like that that say this is where you deliver your product, or we take MasterCard and we take Visa. Those are things that, to me, are minuscule messages. They're not a commercial message. They don't rise to the level of what we want to regulate. So we're trying to very clearly exempt the things that just don't matter. But if the big signs that advertise the business or that try to draw attention towards that establishment, that's what the purpose of this was.
So this is purely commercial?
It is. And commercial is, that's the term that is used. But make no mistake that the identity of a church or a school or a government building, even though it's not commercial and that commerce is taking place there, those are also considered commercial messages because you're trying to attract attention to that establishment just for the sake of saying, hey, this building is the city hall or this building is such and such school. So those are regulated as commercial messages as well.
So besides the definition, the terminology, and the general definitions that are explained in the ordinance, and with us having a clear understanding that this only regulates commercial messages, what do you think is the largest impact to our community by this ordinance update?
That's a very good question. So there's a lot of just little nuance changes throughout the ordinance. We have not, if I think of a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being no regulations at all, 10 being the strictest regulations you can imagine. Think about some communities that maybe have ramped the regulations up really high. If your ordinance was a 6 before, we're at like a 6.5. I don't think we took any major leaps in regulation. We added clarity in the sense that when a temporary sign shows up and it's placed in the right-of-way, is that you can go out there today and remove it. The city has the right to do that. We made that clear. Nobody has the right to put something in the right-of-way. The only entity that can grant permission for that is the Board of Public Works and Safety. We made that clear so that these inadvertent locations of signs, maybe intentional placement of signs, it doesn't matter if it's on a telephone pole or a freestanding sign or whatever it may be, those can be removed. They're in the public right-of-way.
So you think the biggest impact of the ordinance is the clarity with the terminology, with the definitions, with how it's explained. But as far as the way we do business in the community of Martinsville, you're not foreseeing much of a change if it went from a 6 to a 6.5 in degree of difficulty, correct?
In the level of regulations,
Right.
yes. So I would also, though, add that, for instance, temporary signs was one of those frustrations that folks have mentioned to the city leadership. We understand that that's been an issue. We've made sure that those types of signs would require a permit. There's a time limit, a clear time limit on how much time they can be set out there. We haven't said that they can't be there at all. We've said that you've got, I think it's 30 days per calendar year to have those signs out there. They just can't stay out there in perpetuity. So we're not, again, trying to put anybody out of business or to not be able to have those signs. It's just that there are clear limitations now instead of the free-for-all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things here says includes grossly offensive language.
Yes.
Who determines that?
So that is a new addition that's never been in your ordinance. It's not in very many ordinances at all. This is a good case of where there's no court rulings on this so far. But here's the logic, is that if you're literally not able to say certain words or show certain images on the television during the daytime, or air it on the radio, or put it on the internet, I mean, we've got laws against those three categories. Why would we allow that same content, imagery or words, to be on a sign that's visible 24 hours a day? So what we've done is said that if the FCC clearly does not allow this, following their rules that have been challenged in court, that would be a violation to have that on a sign. Same thing with the internet. I think it's the internet pornography laws. Same thing as if somebody was going to put that type of content on a sign. And believe me, that's been proposed and it's actually shown up on signs in some communities around the country.
It's very subjective.
It is, yes. But the rulings have been very clear too, that in an artistic way, meaning that we go to museums and we see nudity in paintings that are praised for their art, but then there's also stuff that is not considered art. And the courts, again, that's where we can't say that this would absolutely be upheld in court, but it's a better basis than just saying, we don't like that kind of stuff. We're basing it on the internet laws, the FCC's laws, and trying to use that as the basis. And honestly, it's just never been challenged. It's never been used before. It's something that myself and a couple of attorneys kind of envisioned as a new basis for being able to regulate content. Because in sign regulations, you really cannot regulate content. That's been the baseline that's been set. But in this case, we are trying to regulate content based on those specific laws and those specific agencies' rules.
I actually ran across an email with the Association of Indiana Municipalities, and there was a council session. They were talking about this profane content on the sign, and
Right.
one of the attorneys weighed in and said, "You can't do it."
Yeah, and like I said, I feel better, and a lot of the clients that I work with feel better having something in there, knowing that it could get challenged. But because we put in the basis is the FCC's rulings and their regulations and this internet content, why would we allow something to go on the internet that a child will likely never see at the age of 4, but the mother and the daughter could be driving down the street and they're seeing it at 12 noon. So I think there's some basis there, and that's what's not been challenged, is using those as the basis for the regulations. If you ever get it, I mean, obviously you need to find your attorney really fast and just, do that research, but I think that there's a chance that it would be upheld. I've been involved in at least one other case that went to the Indiana Supreme Court on a different matter, but it was settled law that we had challenged in this ordinance. The 2 lower courts actually overruled the ordinance. It went to the state Supreme Court and they actually upheld the regulations that we wrote. So, and it was all for health and safety purposes, but they said that for the very first time, subdivision control regulations do not have to be ministerial. You can have discretion in your subdivision regulations if it's for health and safety reasons, that's just not been upheld anywhere until that court case. So again, we don't know until it gets challenged, but I think it's worth trying.
So if we would adopt this law, let's say there's somebody that sells patio umbrellas out of their front yard. They have a sign in their front yard. They have their mother-in-law down the street that puts a sign in her yard and they put a sign in a county-owned property. What would be the consequences of that?
So the way this ordinance is written is that any one residence has the right to have a sign in front of their house at any given time for any purpose and for any duration, because again, we can't be content specific. So if you want to sell your house and you want to put that for sale sign up there, and maybe the market's tough and it takes you 2 years to sell your property, is that we can't have any limitations on you having that for sale sign.
No, what I was saying is,
I'm
okay.
going to keep going around, but so it's the exact same thing. Somebody can have a single sign in their yard for any reason, for any duration, because we have to accommodate the sale of people's property. So in this case, their house is not for sale. They can use that one allotment for a sign to sell umbrellas. Now, you may have a regulation about home-based businesses that would say that's not permitted. But as far as the sign by itself is concerned, is that they can use it to say, support the high school. They can say, my kid's awesome. They can say, I dislike the governor, or they can say whatever they want to on that sign. They get a sign. So in that case, the mother that's down the street can have that same sign because she has one allotment as well. Now, having it on county property, again, they would not legally have the right to have it on somebody else's property without their permission, and certainly not in the right-of-way of any street in the city without permission of Board of Public Works and Safety. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that was a roundabout way to get there, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people have little cottage businesses.
Yeah.
They're on busy, busy
Right.
streets, and they feel like they can make a little extra money, then they should be able to.
Yeah. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 14, and
Right.
I get it. I mean, people,
Right.
and honestly, if you go back 100 years, there's even more cottage industries. People have
Oh, yeah.
lots and lots of businesses out of their homes. And
But I have
we're
one
getting
more
back to
question. I know we've listed the standards, and we've talked about the language, the clarity. Who polices this?
So your code enforcement officer is ultimately responsible for that. I think that's Gary in this case. Or no? Oh, there he is.
Building inspector.
Building inspector. It falls, all of your zoning regulations would be, this is a zoning regulation, it would be the same as all of the other regulations that you might have.
What's the current penalty for violation of the sign ordinance?
We did not change processes or the penalties in this ordinance. We've just focused on the regulations of the signs. So nothing has changed there. One last thing I would definitely want to say is that none of us have a crystal ball. The committee that worked on this, myself, Plan Commission that's reviewed it and certified it, council tonight, we don't know 100% if it's dialed in perfectly or not. My commitment always when I work on ordinances is to stay involved. Even after the contract's finished, I get paid 100%. If you call me up and you say, hey, the city of, the town of Cicero, just as an example, called me up and said, gosh, you know what, I know we all looked at it, we all reviewed it, we all agreed that the numbers were right, but we've had 5 variances for detached garages, and they all wanted the height to be just a little bit taller. Instead of having flat roofs, they wanted a little steeper roof. Can we change the height, maximum height from 15 feet to 18 feet? Like, absolutely. Those are the types of calibration things that you will need to do with this. It's not necessarily 100% done after you adopt it, but keep in mind that I'm committed, I'm sure the city is committed to making sure that we keep revising it for a little bit of time here. Hope for the next year you'll learn a lot as to whether or not it's working or not. And if we've made any errors, we're going to correct those errors and bring them back to the Planning Commission, bring them back to you to get them corrected. Because even though there's only 14 pages here, sometimes you inadvertently overlook something. And and I don't want you to feel stuck with what you've got. We want to change it for you.
Any other questions for Brad this evening? Okay. Brad, thank you for coming down.
You're welcome.
As this is the first reading of this ordinance, no action will be taken this evening. We'll have it on the agenda at the next meeting. Next on the agenda is the second reading and consideration of ordinance 2024-1890. That is the 2025 city budget. Mr. Meredith?
Yes, before you tonight, council, is ordinance 2024-1890, 2025 City of Martinsville budget. This is the budget that you all agreed to at the workshop that was held on June 22nd. This reflects the request from that workshop. No changes have been made.
I make a,
I was just going to ask any questions for Mr. Meredith.
I make a motion that we approve this, the budget, the city budget, ordinance 2024-1890.
There is a motion on the floor to approve ordinance 2024-1890, which is the 2025 city budget. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion has now been seconded. Mr. Meredith, would you please do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Ann Miller?
Yes.
Josh Barron?
No.
Ben Mahan?
Yes.
Susie Lips?
Yes.
John Badger?
Yes.
Approved 4-1.
Thank you, Council. Next on the agenda tonight is resolution 2024-0704, compliance with Title II with respect to the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. Mr. Meredith?
So as stated earlier, this is an update to a resolution that the council passed back in 2019 with the review of NDOT and using the firm at HWC. We noticed that there's a few things that were missing or outdated from our resolution back in 2019. So this is updated with language and direction that NDOT has requested that we include. Also, some things that are required by the state of Indiana. So that is before you for your consideration tonight.
Are there any questions for Mr. Meredith regarding this resolution?
Ben, this ADA coordinator position will be, if approved tonight, will be assumed by you. Would the next clerk treasurer also have this role? Or is this a position that is paid or recognized separately?
It's a separate position. It's not paid. I don't receive any additional compensation for this. I took this role on back in 2019 when I became certified with the ADA. I think I was like the 5th one in the state that became certified, so I took that on then. My recommendation would be that it's just reviewed occasionally. So if I'm ever, not in the seat, or you just want to make a change, then we can change that resolution at any time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Meredith?
I motion that resolution 2024-0704, compliance with Title II in respect to the Americans with Disability Act of 1990 be approved.
I second it.
The motion made and seconded to approve the resolution before you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Tonight you have 2 sets of claims to approve. We sent copies of those prior to tonight's meeting. The first one is October 15th, and the second will be October 28th. Are there any questions or comments regarding the calendars?
Will you be doing these separately?
Yes, we'll do them separately.
Okay.
If there are no questions or comments, I would entertain a motion regarding the claims from the October 15th meeting.
Move to accept.
Second.
A motion made and seconded to accept the minutes from the October 5th, not the minutes, claims from the October 15th meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. And then also then the October 28th claims. Is there a motion to approve the claims for tonight's meeting?
I make the motion, we approve the claims for tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the claims for tonight, October 28th meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Any comments this evening from the council?
I just want to say I thought the city handling the Fall Foliage Festival was spectacular. I thought the Fall Foliage Festival was just a wonderful time for many of our residents here in Martinsville and people coming from outside Martinsville. I think Martinsville was showcased in a very, very positive light. Yeah.
The weather was fantastic.
Yeah, and the way, yeah, I think Mother Nature helped us out a lot, yeah. I have one other question. Are we still televised?
Yes.
We are? Okay, I just don't see it.
It's, the camera is right below the exit sign.
Oh,
And I'm
okay.
so, if it's solid red, we're on. So when it's red, be careful what you say.
Okay.
And we do turn it on, just so everybody knows, about 2 minutes prior to the meeting starting. We don't turn the microphones on until we start, but we do start the live stream 2 minutes early, just in case there's a lag. That way, it's not cutting anything off.
Anything else from the council? Anything from the public this evening? If not, I've got a list of announcements. Recognize trick or treat hours will be this Thursday, October 31st, 6 to 8:30. We ask that trick or treaters only visit houses whose front porch lights are on. If you don't wish to have trick or treaters, we suggest that you turn your porch light off on Thursday evening. All non-emergency city offices and services will be closed on Tuesday, November 5th for the general election. For those who have trash pickup on Tuesday, that will be picked up on Wednesday. And we strongly encourage everyone to get out and exercise their right to vote. Also, all non-emergency city offices and services will be closed on Monday, November the 11th, for Veterans Day. For those who have trash pickup on Monday, it will be picked up on Tuesday, November 12th. Please note that the utility office and the transfer station will be closed on Saturday, November 9th, in observance of the holiday. Additionally, we'd like to encourage everyone to attend the annual Veterans Day program, which will be conducted by our local veterans organizations. Programs in 11 o'clock on the 11th over on the corner of the courthouse would be the southwest corner of the courthouse. Again, due to the Veterans Day holiday, our next regular meeting of Common Council will be on Tuesday, November 12th at 7 o'clock. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.